Welcome back to the Shire. We left you off last witnessing the deconstruction of the modeling phase of this beautiful Porsche 91710 from 1973, Hockenheim, Interserie, first place, Vic Elford. These fly cars are just a modeler and tuner's dream, right? You can certainly, as we've talked about, run this car box stock out of the box, and you'll have a fun time watching this car go around. But if you're up for it, and you're willing to make just a few modifications and have some confidence to do some things that are absolutely going to pay dividends in the long run from a modeling perspective and a tuning perspective, then keep following me here, because this is really going to build some momentum beautifully in this video, where we start to now take that modeling aspect to a whole nother level, and we get into what is really going to happen to save a bunch of weight. And then we'll get into the next part where we start to do some tuning. So don't forget, if you like this kind of content, help the channel out, hit that like button, subscribe, and give me some feedback. So let's now continue where we left off. So this is the old teacher focus here. Show your work. Show your work. Well, this is our model again, of course, right? And we can see that it was taken down just actually on the outside of this little mark here. So we're going to use that as our guide. And we're going to start with just a blade. Pretty sharp one. Fairly recently used. Fairly recently replaced, excuse me. Just trying to clean it. You know, I'm probably going to block what I'm trying to do a little bit with the camera, but you are aiming for just along the outer edge of that line. The reason why we're aiming for along the outer edge of the line is you want to maintain the integrity of this body post screw chassis point here. And if you go, I don't know if you can see it, but it might be worthwhile trying to document. See how tight that line is. If you went to the inside of it, you'd start to hit that piece. So, you know, we're going to just start to try and come down the outside. I think I can come down the outside of it easier from the top than I can going to the back. And we want to go slowly. I don't really care if I make marks in this direction. I don't want to make marks going in that direction, because then I'll have to repaint that silver, right? So I want to lean with a little bit of pressure and start making some marks into this. All right, now we have one clean line. Now I should start to be able to repeat this. And there's more than one way. You can already see, though, that I'm getting some plastic in there, right? In the blade edge. So there's more than one way to do this, and this is the way that I'm going to start doing it, so that I can do it nice and carefully. Because you will get in there. You'd be surprised just about how much cutting you can actually do with an X-Acto knife or a blade like this. You could actually use a true, maybe not a box cutter, but you know, the slide in, slide out kind of knives. You can cut metal roofing with those if you got a sharp enough blade. I am already sinking into this. I can tell you that I'm already sinking in. So I'm not going to bore you with 35 strokes, but you can see that there's already plastic right there on the edge. There it is. So then what you're also going to have to do is you're also going to have to draw your own line in the sand or draw your own line in the plastic, where you're going to have to make a decision on how much of this you're going to cut off. So you're eventually going to have to come straight down there as well. So now I want to show you why taking your time on this matters. I've only had this paused for about 30 to 45 seconds. And with a sharp blade, you can already see I'm coming through. And the reason why it's important to do it this way and then clean it up afterwards is if I took a Dremel disc, I would be eliminating an awful lot of plastic.
And yet with care, I've already started to come through, and I'll bet you in another 45 seconds, less than another 15 strokes, because of my sharp blade, I'm going to have one side off. Once you've made your mark here, this is where it might seem counterintuitive, like we're, little elves working on Christmas toys. Oh yes, folks, Christmas is coming. But it's effective to use this like a saw. Make your mark and then be effective and firm in that same spot over and over again. And then you won't have to worry about messing up either part of this, particularly the outer part of it, where you don't want to come back and scratch. And before you know it, again, this is not an ABS plastic. This is actually the fortunate part of why you can do this with this particular slot car, because this particular chassis is some sort of interesting styrene-like material where you can just see how much, whoops, pardon me, folks, you can just literally etch into that and, move the cutting process along. And again, as you can see, it's only been a couple of minutes here. It's been barely any time, and I have almost got it done. And I think we should be able to see the fruits of our labor right here. Scored a number of times, but on the side now, coming in a little bit harder. Coming down, and here we go. There we go, and the last little bit right there. And there it is. There it is, folks. And now if you put these side by side, you will see an identical look right there. And then here is your piece. Here is your perfect piece. And you have a nice little bit of a guide here as well. We've got two pieces that stick out from the edge of the body, where it's going to help you find, easy for me to do, where it's going to help you find where that number 7 should line up. And you've got a couple of opportunities. You got a couple of seconds, right? Get your glue on there sparingly. CA glue does a great job. Get it on there, even if you have to put a little drop and then run it there with your finger, and then just boom, that's it. And there you go. I'm going to do the other one. And certainly last but not least, we're making our way around this final corner here. Now you will have to really get a good grip. I'm not even in the camera. You really will have to get a good grip on this and really, get your blade in here when you're working on these parts of it, with firmness and really firmness and precision, but it can be done. Should be Ryan. There we go. And 3, 2, and 1. Boom. And there you go. There you go. The same thing on both sides. And notice we've kept the integrity. We've kept the integrity all the way around that deep pocket on both sides for the screw to come through. So there you have it. Get yourself a little bit of sandpaper or file or whatnot, clean up what you need to. You should have a little bit of a bezel here from that part of the bottom of the chassis, depending on which side came away and which side stayed behind. But, similarly to the other side, now we have our piece to, and again, you got these two little tabs right here under the 7 and under the back. And, well, there you go. I can keep it out of the glare. Boom. All right. That's what we'll do next. All right. So as you can already see, and you can hear me, my shuddering voice as I'm shaking the tester's bottle again. I've already done this side, okay? And I'm choosing the tester's clear cement. This stuff is fantastic. It dries hard, sturdy, but it takes like 45 minutes to an hour to dry. So hopefully I didn't lose my end. You really do have to make sure that you cap this well and you can still disseminate from the bottle. So I'm going to try and do this maybe looking above and then getting some on here. This is nice stuff to work with, really nice. Get a little bit on that little edge right there too. Probably got my finger in the way. Honestly, that'll be enough. That really ought to be enough. You don't have to move quickly on this, okay? Clean up what you just did. You need to rub this stuff off well on the edge of your tip and then cap it. You have plenty of time to move with this glue. Okay. So here we are. Obviously, we need to be careful and not move the other side, right? First and foremost. So I'm going to come in from the top, with this being the top, coming down towards this and getting on there. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to hold that there for a good solid period of time, and I'm going to take it off camera. But now that I'm there, I'm going to make sure I'm straight, and then I'm going to get into a good spot, and I'm going to set it down. I'm going to wipe away the excess surface real quick, just raising it with my finger, raising it. I'm going to look down the side and check it for fitment. Check the other one, make sure I didn't mess up the fitment on that side. Boy, I don't know about you guys, but that looks pretty stinking good. And match up the number 7 there pretty well? I think so. So let's not do too much more, and let's put this down and let it dry. All right, now that I've put it down, so what we're going to do is once this dries after a good solid 45 minutes to an hour, there's no reason to rush on this glue. It becomes solid. Then we're going to come back and right inside here, then we're going to take CA glue and we're going to put a drop of CA glue right around there. And then the other one that you should be able to see now, it is right there, and that those 2 posts alone are going to provide stability so that if somebody hits me from the side, there's CA glue to reinforce that. And then I'm going to take a couple of more dots and then just stretch it out across where the gray meets, or the silver meets the orange. And that's really all there is to it. That's how you immediately turn that into a complete body top, and then we deal with the chassis back here. The only other thing left to do to the chassis, depending on fitment, is body float, body float, body float. And you can see that I've done it with this one. Get your Dremel, get your wizard back out, get your file back out, and then you get some work done right there. So we find ourselves again here comparing the underside of this car where we've carded the interior and made it all lightweight, to compare what's going to happen under here. So right now we have now, as you can see, very roughly and very roughly cut off a number of parts along the side of this. So I'm just going to continue. And what you're going to note here is that essentially, as you can see me coming through this whole entire piece here, is that we're going to chop this in half. It may not be as evident, as I'm going to try and close the camera closer to what I'm actually working on. And then maybe I can do a better job of figuring out where I'm holding this compared to the camera. And oh yes, when things come loose, don't be afraid. That's what CA glue is for. Notice what's missing. It can't steer without this little guy, right? At least it might appear that way. So move it, get it out of the way. It was in the littlest dab of glue behind there. Take it out, get it out of your way. This is actually already coming completely free on one of these 2 sides. I can't remember which side it is coming free on, but whichever side it's coming free on, it's not going to, there you go. See, it's coming free on this side. It's not going to matter. We're going to be able to put this whole entire thing together as long as we take care with our wizard. In my case, yes, it's a wizard. It would also be super, super helpful. Oh no, my battery twisted in the charger. I'm not so sure it's have been charged. Let's find out. Oh no, we don't have a full charge. We'll see how far we can get. So we're going to continue, as you can see where we've started to make our way by cutting this in half. We're going to continue. Now we're going to pick it up on this side. Or we're going to drop it. We're not going to pick up anything. All right, we seem to be coming at it from the same places. Excellent. Excellent. And don't worry about all this. None of this is going to matter. You're going to get out your testers or your Tamiya, whatever you prefer, and you know, again, this is also underneath. No one's ever going to see any of this, but you're not going to worry about this, right? You know, you don't need to care at all about any of that. Now, this part is different. If you can make a nice clean cut from here to here, you can take this piece of silver and you can put it across right here and block the view down through his feet where I put a piece of black there on this guy. Again, don't throw away parts, save plastic where you can. It might look like a mad mess because of this weird styrene silver that this is, but I'm going to try it. All right, not bad. Look at that. Not bad. We got daylight. That right there is a solid piece of silver plastic that can be used to supplement parts on here when we're trying to hide things. All right, we have got quite the work done here on this guy. And now you can see where we're going with all this, right? We've really created, let's do the other half. Let's do the other half. And you will see exactly what we've created. We will have created the platform that will be where there's actually no more cuts needed. And then we will start to work on actually the design process where we'll card this interior. I kind of like the blackish grayish floorboard. Listen, whatever, you know, you can take a piece of cardstock and open up your Google Office or Microsoft, whatever, and print some color that you want for your floorboards. Or go get cardstock in that color. Or get a Sharpie. There's so many ways to get the job done. It's all about your creativity. That's the best part about this, right? By the way, I should mention, this is a cut disc. This is not a sanding disc. This is a cut disc. You can do some fine sanding if you want to, but you won't achieve much with these tools, Dremel or other, unless you have a cutoff wheel. There we are. A little bit of cleanup with the fingers. Figure out where we need to come back with some silver testers. And I'm going to take a gamble that this is probably very close, if not an even better job, as practice makes perfect, right? And what do you know? It literally can fit directly on top of the previous one. And we're also going to next work on finding out, as we start to get this back inside of here, the next thing that we have to figure out is just where should Vic sit. There's also a nice little, it's interesting, there's just a little piece of plastic that is kind of nudged here from what probably was the injection molding, and it's actually helping me guide exactly where this piece can not only rest. If you see these two notches here, again, if you choose to go this far, these are the undersides of this right here, and it perfectly fits. You see the shape? But there's also a little notch right there that it leans up against, and you can literally just press it up against it. So maybe one of the best ways to back build this interior is part it afterwards and start to put everything in place first, right? I might glue this part in right now. Remember afterwards I said I would weigh all the bits and pieces. A lot of bits and pieces right there. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Little tip, if you're having problems with your CA glue, I like Loctite, take the cap off and just dip, 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 right? Just take the cap off of your favorite brand. Take the cap off of your favorite brand and get a toothpick, okay? Now, interestingly enough, as I get the toothpick out of my mouth, we're not going to put Vic's steering wheel back on until we get Vic back in the car, because that's easy enough to put back in the right hole once we have the right things in the right places. Because if we try and put Vic in from the bottom or the top, one of the ways he's probably not going to fit, particularly from the bottom. And we might need to put Vic in from the bottom, and then the steering wheel is going to be in the way, and then I got to figure out how to get his arms past the steering wheel and all that kind of stuff. So my recommendation now, if you're going to follow along with this, is don't worry about where Vic needs to be. You're going to cut Vic off at a certain point and put his seat and his head and his upper back resting above this and somewhere up against the back of this. He was driving on this side, right? So the goal right now should be just get this piece inside the car. That's it. So let's just get that piece inside the car. But before we do that, before we even try, just see where it needs glue. See where things are going to rest before you go crazy on this, right? Because if you put CA glue in the wrong place under here, it's going to show through to the other side of the car, and you don't want that, right? We're trying to maintain the integrity of the modeling aspect and the slot car. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty obvious. Hopefully you all can see now the concave nature. Oh, I'm blocking the view entirely with my hands. Somebody say something. I'm kidding. Nobody can say anything until I post the video. So now you see the concave nature, right? And you can see where all those points are. So go for it, right? Just keep that glue away from places you don't want it to get to. It's that simple. Of course, if you close the glue, Tony, you have to reopen the glue. I'm going to try and do this. I know I'm a little bit tight right now on the view. All right, here we go. Sure, I'm going to block the view. I'm sure I blocked the view. There's a good view of it. But you can see where I'm trying to get that into, that concave spot. Let's pause for a moment. I'll pick it back up and explain. All right, it's like we were tack welding, right? We were tack welding, and then we came back and we did the real job, right? So we got some tacks in there in those four corners, and then I came back and I actually let the rest of the Q-tip and the super glue that was on there draw in the rest of the super glue. So that's essentially kind of a way with this particular car as I'm trying it. And I don't think I did this last time, but this is how I'm trying it with this one, where I'm almost building the card in reverse. I'm trying to put the car back together before I card the interior. A lot of times I'll build the entire card and the body and the driver and everything and then put it all back up underneath the car. But to me, this seemed a little bit more logical to put this back this way. Now, another thing in putting the interior of the car, minus the seats and the driver and the steering wheel and all the other paraphernalia you see here, by putting it back together this way, it actually allows us to find the place to allow Vic to rest nicely without having carded it and then pushed the card up from the bottom and have his head higher than that roll cage that is all covered in orange there. So that's one of the things you can start to figure out, where you can start to see, just how much if we place Vic back in the car, and try and figure out just where he might rest. And I can actually exaggerate that here by holding his head right at the height of that roll cage. And I can tell you that where my thumb is, he's even with the bottom of my new tray interior. So what that then tells us is we can now cut off poor Vic's legs. How's he going to go to the bathroom? We're going to cut off everything right from his backside up.
All right, so now it's time to get Vic, half of Vic, glued now to the back of the seat. And you may have noticed I ran into some technical difficulties, so I'm going to narrate this section as one of my microphones died on me. So right now that we've got Vic at the optimal height, or half of Vic, he's at the optimal height here, and we're test fitting Vic not for where he's going to sit, although we want to get Vic in the right place, but what we're doing is we're trying to get an idea of where the steering wheel is actually going to go back in, right? So look at, by the magic of video, the steering wheel's back in there, but it's not glued in yet. So we're taking a look at the previous build that we did, and now we want to test fit Vic and see, is that the right place within some margins of what it would look like for him to grab that steering wheel. Really, again, this is just all about the fit and finish of the modeling aspect of this. There's no reason not to take your time with these things. This, to me, again, this is half the fun with some of these models like these fly cars. I mean, you could be doing this with a Skelectric car. You could be doing this with an SCX. You know, again, there's a place for our Slottits and our NSRs. But then there's also a place for these that if you leave them out of the box, that's great. But if you want to take them to a point of performance, this modeling aspect, you could consider it part of the tune, of course, but this modeling aspect is what makes everything look great, and you're saving all this weight at the same time as that. So a little bit of a fine-tuning adjustment just to get that steering wheel up. And now what we're doing here is, now that we've got the steering wheel in place, just like I made mention of the interior previously, the silver piece, that I was kind of tack welding it using the super glue, it's the same thing here. You know, I probably should have grabbed a different pair of tweezers, to be honest, but I'm just trying to get anything to get his back to stick. And now that I got his back to stick, I repositioned him slightly and was able to drip some super glue down the seat against the silver, and I've got his head right where I want it. Beautiful, just like it looked like when it came out of that jewel box. Right on time, right on spot, Vic. You can drive with half your body. It's all good. And now that we've got Vic in place, hey, let's complete the modeling aspect. We've got that passenger seat, and of course the fire extinguisher, we're just going to drop a little bit of glue and put it right on top of the card right next to Vic, you know, just in case that gas can with wheels catches on fire. And so just like with Vic and his seat, we're going to cut this seat in half after a little bit of test fitment, and we're going to slot it right up underneath there exactly as we found it when this came out of the jewel box. All the more to complete the look. Easy. Get that Dremel tool, get your wizard, snip it in half, and once again, by the magic of video, you can see the end result being the chair in its permanent place, and I will try and use those nubs on the end of the fire extinguisher to drop that down onto the card as well. So, as I was saying, by the magic of video, there you go. The seat is in place. Both Vic and his ghost companion are ready to roll. So I'm super happy with the way that came out, and figure out just how much weight we are saving. So yeah, hopefully my microphone lasts.
So I've got some nice thin stuff here that I'm going to deal with, and I'm going to make for the underside of here. And this ought to be nice. This ought to be great. Perfect. Let's see what we need on this side. Oh, I'd say right there. Let's see what that looks like. How'd we do? Oh, like a glove. Like a glove. There it is. See what we've created. That's what we created right there. Then we can drop our fire extinguisher. Wow, words are hard today, folks. We can drop our fire extinguisher, or we can turn this over and see if we like the less rubble side. I kind of like that side. What do you think? I'm going to glue it that way, and then I'm going to see about 10 comments, and people are going to go, no, you should have left it the other side up. I'm going to glue it this side. I think I might be able to make a little bit of trimming here, though. I think I might be able to trim this just a fraction. Was better. Oh, yeah, that's golden. All right. I don't know why, but I get really silent when I super glue and hold parts. Y'all can make fun of me about that one. I tend to get really silent. I tend to get really silent when I'm super gluing and holding something in place. Maybe it's the concentration, but that's a funny one. I've noticed that I do that. I'll go really silent. I'll go really silent. Oh, shoot. I just don't want to crush Vic's head while I push this as best I can and finish off whatever remaining glue is available to grab on underneath there. See, I'm doing it again. I am doing it again. That's the old number one no-no on live television or whatever in any show. Dead air. Nobody wants dead air. All right, well, there you go. That is not a perfectly carded interior, but boy, that's pretty stinking solid. So let's get that, oh gosh, let's get this fire extinguisher next to him. Maybe I can't dot it in there appropriately and let it sit off the edge. I don't think there's any real reason to do that, though. I don't want to take any chances that I can't let it sit in there flat and then it rolls around and the super glue is there in perpetuity. Okay, we're back. Flat bottom. Oh, let's see. How do I want to place this? If I was driving and I needed to grab this when I was surrounded by two enormous gas tanks and I thought there was something I could do about it, I guess it was resting at an angle originally. I'll try and rest it in there at an angle the same way. Let's do a little bit of left-handed glue work here. Let's do a little bit of left-hand. Ooh, let's not drop it off of the Q-tip. Off of the Q-tip? Yeah, I'm really having trouble with words today, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pair of tweezers, and this is not a Q-tip. This is a toothpick. I am really having trouble with words today, but nonetheless, we have some glue on there. Deal with that in a moment. Let's drop this guy in there. Easy for me to do. So there you go on camera, not moving around, and boom, look at the amount of weight we saved. So let's count it, by the way, right now. Let's go for it. Now that this guy looks very much like this guy right next to it, let's go ahead and get that scale. I made a tray. I made a 2.35 gram tray. Okay. We're going to see just how much weight I have saved so far. Look at that, folks. If you don't think that makes up a difference from taking that weight that is not at the places for gravity, we want our weight at the bottom of the pan of that chassis. I have already saved, probably when you count all the bits and pieces that have gone flying away, you can see some of them over here. I've already saved 5 grams. 5 grams for this car is, I mean, it's not 10% of the weight, but it sure is over 5% of the weight, and that is an awful lot. So the next step in this process, now that Vic is all rocking and ready to go in his seat, is we're going to have to deal with this motor, this engine, this motor cover, everything. And really one of the things that's, lucky about this car is I've shown how the rear end fits in here and where it all goes in and how, this lines up right there. We can use that as a guide. And because we don't need anything back here in the way, and we just have to be careful about these spots, we actually want to remove a large chunk of this black. But what you have to keep in mind is, and it's very important, we want to keep the integrity of this cage back here. And in order to keep the integrity of this cage, we're going to have to glue these pieces right here down to the inside of there. And you can't just cut this entire black box off, because the black box is what's holding on to the rest of this and the exhaust and all these kinds of things here that are resting inside of these little rounded pieces. So I'm going to basically take the Dremel and get this out of the way, and then I'm just going to cut off that entire rectangular box shaped piece. Okay, so now you can see we have still our cage here, and we have that. And again, you can't get rid of this because even though you might say, but Tony, all you need is this circular part to shine through the top of the body there. That's true, but all the rest of this has some integrity that needs to be dealt with. So you need to hang on to that part, and you need these pieces especially because these two pieces rest against the inside of the underside of the back of the body. Let's see what we have here. It's a little bit incapable of being, it's too deep. It's too deep, and so we don't need those other pieces in there. So the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove probably these two fronts of it, and we're going to go ahead and just lop that off. Because it's these pieces right here that we're going to rest against the bottom of the underside here to hold everything else in place. All set, and guess what? We can count these bits and pieces. Definitely don't throw that away. You know what I see right there? I see roll cage written all over that for something custom added to our bits and pieces. Oh yeah, I took the remaining pieces from the other 91710 last time, the yellow one, and I made a roll cage for a slotted Alpha 330, 33.3 or whatever the heck I'm trying to say. Yeah, that Alpha slotted classics. Okay, where was I? Let's test fit this now. I think we're feeling a lot better about that test fit now. Right on point. And now I can also, by putting that where it belongs, got that where it belongs. I should be able to manipulate those pieces back in. I can, but they're still not at the depth they should be at. So what I think I'm going to do is, just to be on the safe side, because I know that I need some to be able to push back a little bit, depending on where this cage wants to rest. I might glue from inside of there with tester's glue, but whatever I do, I need to potentially have the room to manipulate from this side. And if these pieces are pushed all the way up against here, and that's stopping me, then that's not going to help me. So I'm going to trim those just a little bit shorter. Now this gives me the opportunity to really manipulate this piece in and out, wherever I need to, right? And now it's time to go get that tester's glue. Right now we can push this piece right to where it needs to be, line that up perfectly, hold it in place, start to work on where the rear end should settle, giving ourselves a little bit of time because we have the tester's glue. And then once that tester's glue is really settled, then we can do that little tack weld approach again, where we can come in and we can tack that down. We can tack that side down with super glue, and then that's really it. And then what we can see is, can we carefully lift the body off to get through the motor? I highly doubt it. And just how much of that are we going to have to take off? Got it in there, and I just threw the tiniest amount of hot glue, as you can see right there up against the back of that. We are almost ready to tune this slot car. We are almost ready to tune this slot car. Wow. Wow, that makes me so happy. I know it makes Vic happy too. He just can't talk to you right now. He's in my radio headset. I'm his crew chief. So now when we look at this back end, now we can manipulate this, right? We can manipulate this. We can make sure the pipes are coming out straight. I think I'm probably going to throw a tad bit of hot glue there and a hot glue there on each side and press that in. Maybe some super glue to start with there. Just tack it in place. I like that idea. Making sure that I'm getting that where it needs to be. I don't know if I'm going to tack that into place. Sometimes these do better free floating if somebody hits you from behind than they do if they're super glued. But what we're going to have to do still, no matter what, is that motor, that Predator motor that's going to sit right there, at some point these things aren't going to work. So we're going to have to take some of this off, either something here of these mufflers or whatever they are, and then some of this. So we're going to have to get this fixed in here in some way, probably from down here. So now that I've figured out that this is in a really, really good place, and I've glued those two black pipes up against the bottom, and I've glued the black that would have been otherwise the motor cap that's held that in place. I'm now going to actually clip those silver pieces of the cage that was around the motor even shorter. And I'm going to come in with hot glue right there where you can see it exposed along the sides. Once I have this exactly where I want, and then this can free float a little bit, but it'll be hot glued on the inside. Let's see if I can't just do that right now and grab these pieces and get that inconsequential stuff out of the way. There we go. And that will allow me to also ensure that I'm not in the way of the motor when the motor is in there, right? We don't want to get too much hot glue stuck up on top of here. We've got an 18,000 RPM short can motor to fit across here. There it is. Now we've got that dab of hot glue exactly where I said it was going to be on both sides. Well, the glue melted that piece of cage, but we don't have to see that any longer. And now look, we've got the lights exactly where they should be at the proper depth, just beyond the back of the actual body. We've got the pipes sticking straight out the back as they should be. And now, like I said, now all we have to do is figure out just how much of that needs to disappear. I'm going to save myself the hassle, and I am just going to cut those cage pieces short. And if that's the muffler, if those two pieces are mufflers, I'm going to leave those on there, and then maybe they have to get clipped. But since I have the clipping tool out, I'm just going to go ahead and clip those pieces off right now. I'm not going to create a hassle for myself at all or even worry about it. I'm just going to clip these two pieces equidistant and call it a day on those pieces, right? Now I don't have to stress over that any longer. I've got that done. And if those two pieces right there that are mufflers or whatever they are, then so be it. How could I forget? We have the luxury of this tune, this wonderful tune right here. So all we have to do is try and fit this body on here. Now I can tell you on the other one, I did cut off those pieces if they're mufflers, whatever they are. And clearly we can't. We can't get on there. So, you know, I'm going to absolutely have to make some adjustments there, right? So if that's the case, then, well, I think I'm just going to have to bust out the clippers that I just had in my hand. And I'm going to have to clip off both of those pieces. And that's okay. I am more than okay with that. Again, we're maintaining the integrity of the majority of the motor components back here and the engine and the exhaust and everything. Yeah, but now those pieces aren't there. What say you, mister? Can we fit? Oh, there it is. There it is. How close is it? It's almost there. Something's still hung up on it. Something's still hung up. Oh, it's the rear axle. Well, folks, that's just not going to happen. If the rear axle is what's getting stuck, then that's not going to be able to be there. It's that simple. So as I continued, I realized there was something else I could do to reduce even more weight. I have taken that back half of the black part of the motor and I have glued it to the end of the tailpipes. And in the event that this doesn't fit in successfully, even still with the motor, which it's meant to, you can start removing the tabs that were right here and right here that were surrounding the motor. So much so that I'm going to go for it and I'm going to remove this no longer, which was needed to keep it in place originally. But now that I've glued and tacked different pieces in place, I can now start to continue to reduce the weight, so much so that I may even be able to reduce a lot of this black plastic here, but I absolutely think that I can disengage this from here. So there you go. So now I've disconnected it, but I've kept the modeling aspect intact in the rear still. And now I don't have anything in the way of the motor at all on the underside. I'm just going to ad hoc this one right here and we're going to splice it in. I just wasn't satisfied. The reality is I just wasn't satisfied and I wanted to create an even more curved carded interior. So all I did was take my card right back off and I just dremeled that down. We'll never know how much more weight I took off, but I took off a lot more weight. And now there's nowhere near the front axle block. And so now I can go ahead and create a curved carded piece, and who cares about that piece that I put on there. Again, it's just the constant evolution of how to get rid of weight from the top of the car and be able to replace that on the bottom of the car. otherwise known as the chassis. All right, now that we've got, listen, Vic's all set, and he's beautiful. Half of him's there. He's got a fire extinguisher in case he needs it. He's got his instrument cluster. Most importantly, he's got a steering wheel. And he's just below that. Roll cage, and so we can just set the body on here, and we can give you the indication or the illusion of what that's going to look like.
So thanks for watching part 2 of this modeling phase of the overall modeling and tuning of this Vic Elford 91710 Porsche from 1973. Stick around, turn on those notifications, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, and next we're going to get into that modeling. We're going to get into that tuning aspect as we just completed all the modeling phase. And then we're going to get this car out on that track and really see how this paid dividends for us. Thanks for watching.
If you don't subscribe to Public Racing, I'll poke you with my staff. Pokey, pokey, pokey.
She will poke you with her staff.
Pokey!